Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be working on a few different things, and the first of which is going to make it so we can collide and detect that collision with the slime. So to start off by doing that, we're going to create a new script, and we're just going to call this enemy. So this script needs to exist on any enemy that we have in the game, such as this slime right here. So I can go ahead and open up this script, and all we need to do here actually is just write generic enemy for now, and then after we press save we can close it. So the script isn't going to have anything associated with it as of now, but in the future we can possibly add all kinds of features. Okay, then we just need to click open prefab and then add the script right there. And then we can click back and return back to our normal scene here. The next step that we're going to need to do is go to the hero controller and open that up. So when we go to the controller there, we need to make quite a few changes here. So just right at the bottom here, what we want to do is we want to add an onCollisionEnter 2D event. So we can go ahead and do that, and what we need to do is we need to see who we're colliding with. So the rigid body that we have attached to the hero also has the collider, and whenever it collides into anything, we have this onCollisionEnter 2D event occur. So what we get from this is the collision2D other. So this other contains the actual object for us, and by checking that object we can see what we collided with. So if we collide with the rocks or the tree, we really don't care, but if we collide with an enemy, we want to make it so we actually switch into a battle scene. And we're not going to actually work on that this episode, but we can at least get the starting points done for it. So we want to do, or actually not collision, we want to do if other dot game object, and then we want to get its component, we want to get the enemy component, and we basically want to see if this exists. And how you see if something exists through code is you can do does not equal null, because how this works is it's going to return this script, but if this script doesn't exist, then it returns null. So we have to do sort of a double negative. So what we do is does not equal null, and the opposite of that would be it does equal something. So basically this is saying if this does actually exist, so it does have the enemy script, and therefore we know it is an enemy, then what we want to do is, for now, we just want to do debug log, and we can say start battle scene. So that way we know if it works or not. Let's try that out real quick. I'm going to press play right here, and then I'll switch to the console to see if that works. So I'm just running around the scene. Nothing happens when I collide into that, but when I collide into this, you can see it says start battle scene. If I collide again, it keeps on going like that. So that's perfect. Alright, we just tested that out so we know it works. So we can actually go to the bottom here and just remove this. And then for now we can just leave a comment for ourselves saying start battle. And we'll have the chance to work on this a lot more in the future. So our next step is going to be to create a new scene. So just in the scenes menu, go and create, and then click on scene. And then we can call this initialize. So before we actually load our Forest 1 scene here, which is basically the first level as of now, we want to have an initialize scene. And the reason that we want to have an initialize scene is we want to be able to set up some different things before the game starts. So for now, it's just going to be one thing that we want to initialize, and that is the game controller. So most video games have some, I guess you can say, godlike object or overarching object that is able to control everything in the game and gets top priority. So basically, if you don't know where to put something, you can just put it in the game controller, and the game controller can just control everything for you. So we have created just an empty game object here, but we're going to need to add a script for it. So we can go ahead and create a new folder and just call this the game controller folder, and then we can create a new C# script and also call that game controller. So we can load up this script, and there's a few things that we're going to need to add here. So what we can do is we can start by going to the top and adding another using. So by default, we just have these three, and I won't get into the details of them, but the basic idea is that we're just importing different useful features. So what we want to do is we want to also include the using Unity engine.scene management so that we can work with different scenes, because the point is we want to initialize the game right here and then instantly go into the first level. So I'm going to make an awake function right here. So the game controller, right when it's awake, it's going to call this don't destroy on load function. So what usually happens when you switch to a different scene is that the object is basically destroyed, and then the new scene is loaded, and all the objects are loaded in. But if you have don't destroy on load, that's going to mean that the object stays alive basically forever when your game is running. And then we also want a start function here. So right when the game is started up, we want to see if we are currently in the initialize scene. So what we do is if scene manager.getActiveScene, and we want to see if the name of the scene is initialize. If that's true, then that means we want to load the scene. So scene manager.load scene. And for now, we will just type in forest1 right here. So let's go ahead and see if that worked. Right, so we get the error because we need to first add the script to the game controller. And then if we click play, you can see it instantly goes into the first level. And you can see right here, we have our forest1 scene, but we also have this don't destroy on load option here too, which contains the game controller. So that worked perfectly. All right. Now the only thing that I want to change real quick for this just involves how we set up this load scene right here. So instead of loading in forest1, we might want to change that in the future, or just mess around with it, I guess. So what we can do is we can make a public string and just call it load scene. And actually we can just not set the value. So instead of loading in forest1, or actually I'll rename it to start scene, which sounds a little bit better. So if we have this string right here, you'll see I can click on the game controller, and the game controller will let me choose my own start scene right here. So instead of having to go into the code, we can do that. And that's perfect, because at least for testing purposes, we might want to change what scene we start with. The actual game should probably start with a good first level, but when we're testing, we might want to switch which level, for example, that we're starting with. So now the last thing that we're going to work on is actually expanding this level a little bit and making it bigger and more intricate. So the first thing that we can actually do with this is go to this collidable layer, and we can copy and paste it and make another collidable layer, because we want to have some collidables that are on top of other collidables. So I'll just call this collidable 2, and I'll set the Z layer to -2. And then I'll go to collidable and set this Z layer to -1. And then when we're working with these tiles on the map, we should switch the focus on to tile map, because this is going to make it a lot safer for us when we're working with this, just because we don't want to accidentally be working with the wrong tiles. So I'm going to click on the tile palette, and what we can go ahead and do is just add a bunch more to this level to make it look a little bit nicer and a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to start off by, whoops, I'm on the wrong layer here already. I'm going to click and just add a bunch more grass to start off with to get the basic idea of how big I want the finished level to sort of be. And I am, just for a disclaimer, by no means very good at level design, but we can still get a basic start on this level at least. So I'll drag out something like this to be the full level. And the one main thing that you should know is that, at least for now, we should try to keep the level square, just because that's the way our border and our camera and everything will work best. So I'm going to do something a little bit like this and just fill it all in with grass for right now, and then we'll fill in other things in a moment here. So yeah, I'll show you exactly what I'm going to add to this level, but you can go ahead and do whatever you want with your own creativity as well. You don't have to follow this level design for sure if you don't want to. So go ahead and feel free to skip ahead. But I'm going to keep working on this. And I've finished the level. So I've made two important changes that you need to keep note of. The first one is that I added this fishing rod to collidable 2. And the reason I added it to collidable 2 is because there's two layers of collisions right here. So there's this little pool or lake here that you collide with, and then there's the collidable 2, so the fishing rod that you also collide with. And they need to be on different layers, because on tiles, with the tiles there can only be one layer for the tile map. So that means you can't have tiles on top of tiles unless you have different tile maps for them. And the other change that I made is that I went into the camera border. Let me turn the focus off. And I changed the size of it by clicking right here and adjusting it. So we can adjust it to the four corners of the new level that we created here, or the new level size at least. So I'm going to press Control S, and we can walk around the level a little bit. So you can see the new border seems to be working nicely, and there's a lot more to this level, and it looks a lot nicer. So hopefully you made the level exactly how you wanted to make it, and yeah. So now we only have one last thing to add, and that is a new world border. So just an empty object called world border. Because right now we have the camera border, but the player can actually just walk right out. So what we can do is we can go ahead, click add, and then we can click on Edge Collider 2D. So the Edge Collider started down here, and I can move it, and you can see it's just a straight line, but we can make it about the same as the world border. And by clicking in the middle, you can create new edges for it, which we can pull out and extend to the full level. So if I do that, then I can move this over here, and I can do that again, and make it about 4 corners, and make it about the same size as the level here. Okay, but the only thing is on the top, you'll want it a little bit below the actual top of the level, and that's just because the player's collider, if I go back to the player, isn't the full size of the actual player. You'll see that, well, if it would show up, that it's right about right here, only the bottom half of the player. So the bottom half will collide, and then the top will hopefully be about touching the actual top of the map. Alright, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you made a level that you like.